So Glarb just won a tournament, and a pretty big one too, Snowy Summit 2, with a 128 total participants. And that is honestly pretty impressive, with a total of 4 wins, 1 loss and 2 draws from a total of 7 games. So big congratulations. However, Glarb isn't doing great. So from you see here are a total of 100 entries, where one of those 100 is the one that won that tournament basically. And an average win rate from those 100 Glarb tournament entries of 18.22, which have been going up since the start of the ban of Dockside Extortionist and Mana Crypt. So these are only from the most recent ban changes. But if we compare this 18, for example, with Kinnan that sits on 23.89, which is close to 24, that's a big difference. Or maybe even look at Tymna Kraam that is sitting on the best win rate currently. Big surprise, 27, it's doing really good. Even Kendriff actually beats Glarb by a small margin. Ceesay, Weatherlight Captain, another very popular commander, sits on 23.33 average win rate, from 3 times the amount of Glarb entries, while we have Tymna Thrasius sitting on a perfect 24. Now there are of course commanders that are in a worse spot than Glarb, for example Yuriko Tiger Shadow, or Venota is on a very bad spot too. And like so with Italian the Kindly Lord not doing great either. So that should give you some form of perspective on what kind of power level performance and what kind of position Glarb has on a theoretical leaderboard amongst other commanders. But what a boring video, what a boring guy saying that Glarb is bad. That's not what you're here for, right? No, what you're here for is to see how we might be able to build Glarb better, so that you might be finding a better pathway to a better game, basically. You see, you can actually take a look at individual cards. Now, here comes a problem. The sample size of 100 tournament entries of Glarb is a little bit small, therefore the data isn't that strong enough, usually. But what we can do is focus more on this pie chart here in the middle. What you see here is that Commandeer, now you should probably ignore the win rate up there, it's currently sitting on 1394, and that's from 10 tournament entries where Commandeer existed inside the build, but once again the sample size is small. But as you can see, the popularity vote of the pie chart of how many of the 100 that did include it is very small, therefore by the player experience it doesn't seem to be a recommended choice. If we actually take a look at this deck list, we can even see here among sorceries that Commandeer was not inside that build. Bane of Progress is though. So if we take a look fast at the winner who won the entire cEDH tournament, we have Bird of Paradise, Deathrite Shaman, Delight the Halfling, Bloom Tender, Fair Mastermind, Kitsa, Malevolent Hermit, High Fate Trickster, Clever Impersonator, Valley Floodcutter, Oppo Agent, Elvish Spirit Guide, Dryad of the Elusive Grove, Fastest Oracle, Notion Thief, Seedborn Muse, Bane of Progress, again, Consecrated Sphinx. Then we have Imperial Seal, Scheming Symmetry, Demonic Tutor, Final of Devastation, Mnemonic Betrayal, Besiege the Mirror, Cooling Ritual, and Reverent Silence, Destroy All Enchantments. Without paying mana for it. Kinda good actually. Pact of Negation, Chain of Vapor, Dark Ritual, Demonic Consultation, Flusterstorm, Legolas Quick Reflexes, Mental Misstep, Abrupt Decay, Worldly Tutor, Veil of Summer, Vampiric Tutor, Swan Song, Noxus Revival, Mystical Tutor, Born Upon a Wind, Psycrift, Dramatic Reversal, Limdul's Vault, Tainted Pact, Fierce Guardianship, Force of Negation, Misdirection, Force of Will, Mindbreak Trap, Force of Vigor, and Deadly Rollick. Chromox, Lotus Petal, Mox Amber, Mox Diamond, Mana Vault, Sensei's Divining Top, Soul Ring, The One Ring, Talisman of Dominance, Grim Monolith, Arcane Signet, Exploration, Mystic Remora, Counterbalance, Sylvan Library, Copy Enchantment, Necropotence, and Rhystic Study. Among the sorceries, we don't have Doomsday, and among the artifact, we don't have Bolas Citadel, being something that is kinda popular in Glarb builds, give and take. It's a basic 50-50 split on the Bolas Citadel at the very least. Which means that you're not going to just get a better or worse win rate if you include or don't include it. It is working out as it should compared to the average total value of Glarb's performance. and more or less a very similar verdict when it comes to Doomsday. The takeaway from that is that you don't have to go Bola Citadel and Doomsday, even though they are a popular option for the Glarby thing. I personally don't like Counterbalance, but when I think about it, Glarb is actually a pretty decent Counterbalance commander because of that top deck manipulation that he can do. When you surveil 2 in response to something, that can kinda help Counterbalance to actually hit things. So I might actually retract my skepticism for Counterbalance, specifically for this commander. Usually when I look at Counterbalance on other commanders, it doesn't usually showcase a good performance, but in this case it actually does. Talion the Kindly Lord sitting on that perfect CMC 4 is also something you can cast from the top of your library with your Glarb, and as you can see, it's doing a fairly okay job, looking recommended for, well, the win rate is tiny, super small, and once again the sample size is also small, so focus on the pie chart. It looks very popular by players playing Glarb. Polywog Prodigy did have a very low popularity, not very low, but lower popularity vote, and a big drop in the win rate, so I decided to showcase it anyway. And actually the chi-square test, the p-test, is actually statistically significant, so I decided that yeah, this is something we should actually highlight. I've actually looked at Polywog Prodigy in other commanders too, and it's usually getting a bad performance in general. But I would actually take a little bit of a pause and talk a little bit about why potentially Glarb might be struggling, because that is a struggling position, like 18% win rate from 100 games. That's not good. It can absolutely win a game here and there, just like in this beginning of this video, this tournament that Glarb won. But if you actually look at the overall performance of a lot of different people playing Glarb, it is not performing equally compared to other things. I honestly think it's a pretty cool commander, but Sultai is currently a little bit lacking. Even though Dockside is banned, Underworld Breach is still pretty good, and by the way, this would be a very good Underworld Breach commander. Praetor's Grasp to tutor for Underworld Breach feels like an out to include here, honestly. But I also think it actually struggles when it comes into play and when it's going to do its thing, because surveilling 2 on tap is not that good. What's good is where you're allowed to cast spells from top of your library, but they have to cost a total of 4. Here I actually have a complete different kind of dataset, where I've been sitting and watching, observing people play the game and taking notes. Also actually counting how many cards were drawn by a Mystic Remora. Now specifically here we have a commander, Glarb, from Celestial Winning Games, who casted Glarb, and you see cooldown 0. That Glarb casted 0 spells from the top of the library, but Glarb was casted, it was put into play on the game, and yeah, game ended on turn 3. It was actually Lumra who won the game, this thing, mono green. However, the average draw rate, and what I mean by draw rate is how many spells are being cast from the top of the library when you have Glarb in play, is a 2.1, which is really low compared to like a Mystic Remora that is sitting on 6, Rhystic Study that is sitting on 10, Esper Sentinel is sitting on 5 if I may remember correctly, and Tymn is like on 4. So the big problem here is that it doesn't really produce value for you. It's not a value command, or it kinda is, it's doing some small potential value, but on average it's not doing great, and that's because of there is a big luck factor, and you have to include a lot of 4 CMC spells, and that kinda makes it tricky for it to operate perfectly and make it into that fluently value engine train that we are all dreaming of. I mean, sure, we are including this one that you basically cast for free. If you have this on top of your library, you can just cast it and destroy all enchantments. Same thing with Deadly Rollick and Force of Vigor and Mindbreak Trap and Force of Will. I have seen people actually cast Vamp Tutor in response to a spell, put Force on top and counterspell that thing. That's cool. But the ratio of these things are just so few that you still have to like figuring out how to value engine without the commander as well. But because of this high CMC like Consecrated Sphinx, Misdirection, Force of Will, Mindbreak Trap, Force of Deadly Rollick, it's gonna be really hard to play these very powerful Bola Citadel and Ad Nauseam strategies. And once again, you don't have access to red, so you don't have Underworld Breach, so that's tricky too, which means that you're basically going to eventually draw into Thassa's Oracle together with your Consult. Necropotence is still a very good option and very highly recommended in this case. And as you can see, it's sitting on a very high popularity vote. 2/3 of all the Glarb players have included Necropotence, and as you can see, the win rate is increasing. So here's the answer in this video. Glarb isn't bad, it's just that you have to probably play it correctly and try to include combos that is going to make it work, because you're not really a great value engine commander, you're lacking color identities, and you're lacking some of the best win cons in the game, and therefore you have to go with what you have, and Necropotence is the answer. Now normally red is very key together with Necropotence from that final of Fortune, but the printing of Valley Flood color have definitely helped out. And of course Born Upon a Wind too. So what's the future of Glarb? Now that I've made this video, is it going to change? Is the win rate that's gonna be great? Everyone's gonna move over to Necropotence and Born Upon a Wind and Praetor's Grasp for that Underworld Breach? Yeah, maybe, but I don't think that Glarb's win rate is going to grow that much in the end. I think that there's a lot of hype around this commander. I think a lot of people enjoy it. I actually think the commander is really fun. I did build a casual build with Glarb and I really enjoyed that. It's a very cool and fun play style. Like, you get into play something that will allow you to play cards from top of your library really efficiently early in the game. It's just a big like something very demanding to make it work. But in casual it works, but in competitive formats with higher power levels, it is hard to make that deck function the way you visualize it. So I think in the end, Glarb might be able to increase its power level a tiny bit if Wizards prints better cards and if you focus more heavily into Necropotence, but in the end, I think it's going to be a struggling commander, and it's cool that it wins a tournament here and there, but I wouldn't say that it's one of the top-end recommended ones. It's not a bad one, it's definitely other commanders out there with a worse performance, but it's definitely still in the lower end, I would say. In any case, thanks so much for watching, and once again, big congratulations to Logan Doan, who won with his Glarb build in Snow Summit 2. See you guys.